Your exhaustion is not your resume. Welcome to Soft Girl Era, the sacred space where strong Black women unlearn survival, rediscover softness, and reclaim the joy, rest, and freedom they deserve without guilt, without apology, and without explanation. I'm your host, LeAnne Dolce, pronounced Dolce, like sweet softness whispered in French, and I'm your guide from burnout to boundaries, from doing to being, from strong to soft, and loving every second of it. Today, I want to share something with you that came from a conversation I had with Dr. Darcell Streeter, HC Mississippi, EHS, a brilliant mind who is reshaping how we think about leadership, rest, and what it means to truly listen to ourselves. Dr. Streeter is doing sacred work in the world, helping high achieving women, especially Black women and women of color, step out of survival mode and into something softer, something sustainable, something that honors the fullness of who we are. They are creating pathways for women to lead without burning out, to build without breaking down, to rise without losing themselves in the climb. What they shared with me has stayed with me ever since, and I believe it will stay with you too. Because here's the thing, we've been taught that exhaustion is the price of excellence, that if you're not tired, you're not trying hard enough. That rest is something you earn after you've given everything you have and then some. We've been taught that our worth is measured by how much we can carry, how long we can go without breaking, how many plates we can spin before one finally crashes to the ground. But Dr. Streeter helped me see something I had been missing my whole life. Softness is not indulgence, it's infrastructure. Let me say that again because I need you to really hear this. Softness is infrastructure, not indulgence. We treat rest like a reward, like something we get to do once we've crossed every item off the list, once we've proven ourselves, once we've earned the right to exhale. But what if rest isn't the reward? What if rest is the foundation that makes everything else possible? What if the very thing we've been taught to override, our need for sleep, for stillness, for emotional honesty, for quiet, is actually the thing that makes us sharper, clearer, more effective in every room we walk into? I want you to think about that for a moment. Really think about it. How many times have you pushed through exhaustion because you thought that's what strength looked like? How many times have you ignored the signals your body was sending you because you didn't have time to listen? How many times have you said yes when everything inside you was screaming no? How many times have you shown up when your body was begging you to stay home? How many times have you smiled through the pain, performed through the fog, led through the exhaustion? Because that's what was expected of you. Dr. Streeter reminded me that your body is data, not a problem to override. And that shift, that one shift, changes everything. Because here's what we do, we treat our bodies like obstacles, like inconveniences, like things that get in the way of our productivity, our ambition, our purpose. We override the exhaustion. We push through the fog. We ignore the tension in our shoulders, the tightness in our chest, the way our hands tremble when we're standing in front of a room full of people we've convinced ourselves matter more than our own well being. We silence the headaches, we medicate the anxiety, we caffeinate the fatigue, we numb the grief, we schedule over the sadness, we perform through the pain, and we call that strength. But what if strength isn't about overriding the signals? What if strength is about listening to them? What if the bravest thing you could do today is not push harder, but pause longer? What if the most powerful decision you could make is not to say yes one more time, but to finally say no? Let me tell you about Serena Williams. 23 Grand Slam singles titles, one of the most dominant athletes in the history of sports, a woman who has spent her entire life performing at the highest level under the most intense pressure in front of the entire world, a woman who has been celebrated for her power, her resilience, her ability to win when it mattered most. And after giving birth to her daughter, she faced life threatening postpartum complications. She knew something was wrong. She could feel it in her body. She could sense that something wasn't right. And she had to advocate for her own care because even as one of the most recognized athletes on the planet, her symptoms were dismissed. Her pain was minimized. Her concerns were brushed aside. Serena Williams had to fight to be heard. She had to insist. She had to demand the care she needed. And when she finally received the treatment that saved her life, when she finally was listened to, she came back to competition with a different understanding of what strength really means. She came back with greater attention to body awareness, to recovery, to listening instead of overriding. She came back knowing that ignoring her body could have cost her everything. And her story helped push conversations about Black maternal health, about self advocacy, about the cost of ignoring what our bodies are trying to tell us into mainstream visibility. Because even the strongest performers, even the most accomplished women, must listen to their bodies instead of overriding them. That's not weakness, that's wisdom, that's survival, that's love. And then there's Ariana Huffington, co founder of the Huffington Post, a woman who built a media empire, a woman who was celebrated for her hustle, her vision, her relentless drive. And in 2007, she collapsed from exhaustion. She woke up in a pool of her own blood, her cheekbone broken, because her body had finally said enough. Her body had been whispering for years and she had ignored it. Her body had been signaling for months and she had overridden it. And finally, her body stopped negotiating. And instead of pushing through, instead of treating that collapse as a temporary setback, instead of getting back up and grinding harder, Ariana Huffington changed her entire life. She prioritized sleep. She prioritized recovery. She prioritized rest as a non negotiable part of her leadership practice. She founded Thrive Global to promote well being as a business and leadership strategy. And she made rest legible as a leadership practice, not a weakness. She made sleep something to be proud of, not something to apologize for. She made recovery a competitive advantage, not a character flaw. Because here's what she learned, and here's what Dr. Streeter helped me understand: rested leaders perform better, not because they're working less, but because they're working from a place of clarity, of presence, of alignment. They're not running on fumes, they're running on fuel. They're not surviving, they're thriving. They're not grinding themselves into the ground. They're building something sustainable, something that lasts, something that doesn't require them to sacrifice their health, their peace, their joy, their sanity, just to prove they're committed. And that's what softness gives us: fuel, clarity, presence, power. Now, I want to talk about Octavia E. Butler, a pioneering Black science fiction writer who grew up in Pasadena, California, navigating poverty, racism, and a lack of representation in publishing. She worked in a field that often marginalized Black women writers. She required sustained creative output in isolation. She didn't have the luxury of a big advance or a supportive network or a clear path forward. She had to build her own way, and she built a disciplined writing life that protected her focus, her energy, her creative output. She used routines, she used time discipline, she used deliberate self management to preserve the mental space needed for her work. She didn't let the world's chaos dictate her creative capacity. She didn't let other people's demands drain her dry. She protected her energy like it was sacred, because it was. And she became the first science fiction writer to receive a MacArthur Fellowship. She won multiple major awards. She produced landmark works that reshaped science fiction and influenced generations of Black writers and thinkers. She created worlds that had never been imagined before. And she did it by protecting the space she needed to think, to dream, to create. Octavia E. Butler's career demonstrated that protecting your energy, protecting your boundaries can be a form of creative power and cultural leadership. She didn't burn out. She didn't override herself into collapse. She didn't grind herself into exhaustion to prove she was serious. She built a life that honored her capacity, and in doing so, she created a legacy that will outlive us all. Because here's the third thing Dr. Streeter taught me: not yet is a valid form of discernment. For high achieving women, especially Black women and women of color, the freedom to pause before saying yes can be a powerful professional practice that protects energy, clarity, and purpose. We've been taught that saying no is selfish, that hesitation is weakness, that if we don't say yes immediately, we're not committed, we're not serious, we're not strong enough. We've been taught that our value is tied to our availability, that our worth is measured by how much we can give, how much we can do, how much we can carry without complaint. But what if not yet is actually the most powerful thing you can say? What if the ability to pause, to check in with yourself, to ask, do I have the capacity for this? Is this aligned with where I'm going? Is this honoring who I am? What if that pause is not hesitation, but discernment? What if that pause is not weakness, but wisdom? What if that pause is the thing that saves your life? Because when you say yes to everything, you say no to yourself. And when you say no to yourself long enough, your body will say no for you. It will shut down. It will collapse. It will stop negotiating. I know this because it happened to me. There was a day my body stopped negotiating with me. I was standing in front of a room full of people I had convinced myself mattered more than my own well being. And that's when it all came rushing in at once: the exhaustion, the high stress, the inability to even capture my own thoughts. I felt frozen in the moment. My hands trembled. I had spent years saying yes while my body was screaming no, and I kept going anyway because that's what strong women do. That day, I couldn't keep going. My body simply refused. I didn't need more motivation, I needed mercy. So I did something that felt almost illegal in a culture that rewards grinding. I stopped. Not a vacation, not a nap, a full soul pause where I finally listened to the parts of myself I had spent a lifetime overriding. I had been praised my whole life for being the strong one. I don't know how you do it. You always handle it. I didn't realize that strength had become a cage I built for myself, one board at a time out of other people's applause. What I called resilience was actually disconnection. I had learned to interpret my own exhaustion, my own grief, my own body's warnings as inconvenience instead of information. Rebuilding meant learning that rest is not something you earn after you break, it's infrastructure. I started sleeping without guilt for the first time in my adult life. That was the first sign of healing, not joy, sleep. From there, I found I wasn't less effective when I stopped overriding myself. I was sharper, clearer, more myself in every room I walked into. I no longer chase peace. I've learned how to become it. And every woman I coach, teach, or sit across from now, I tell her the same thing I had to learn the hard way. You do not have to be strong by staying exhausted. Your softness was never your weakness. It was the part of you they needed you to ignore. So here's what I want you to take with you today. Softness is infrastructure, not indulgence. Your body is data, not a problem to override. And not yet is a valid form of discernment. You don't have to earn rest. You don't have to prove you're worthy of softness. You don't have to override yourself into collapse to prove you're committed. You can listen, you can pause, you can say no, you can say not yet. You can sleep without guilt. You can protect your energy without apology. You can be soft and still be powerful. You can rest and still be ambitious. You can prioritize yourself and still be a leader. You can choose peace and still be purposeful, because the truth is, you were never meant to carry everything. You were never meant to override yourself into exhaustion. You were never meant to disconnect from your own body, your own needs, your own wisdom, just to prove you were strong enough. You are already strong enough. In your softness, your rest, your ability to listen to yourself, that's not weakness. That's the foundation that makes everything else possible. So here's my challenge to you today. I want you to stop treating your exhaustion like a resume. I want you to stop wearing your burnout like a badge of honor. I want you to stop believing that your worth is tied to how much you can endure, because it's not. Your worth is inherent. Your value is not up for debate, and your body is not the enemy. What would happen if you started treating your rest as sacred? What would happen if you started honoring your no as much as you honor your yes? What would happen if you stopped apologizing for taking care of yourself? What would happen if you gave yourself permission to be soft, to be still, to be human? I'll tell you what would happen. You would become more powerful. You would become more clear. You would become more present. You would become more you. And the world needs that version of you, the rested version, the soft version, the version that isn't running on fumes, but is fueled by purpose, by peace, by joy. So today, I'm asking you to make a different choice. Choose softness, choose rest, choose yourself. Not because you've earned it, but because you deserve it. Not because you're weak, but because you're wise. Not because you're giving up, but because you're finally waking up. Your exhaustion is not your resume. Your softness is your superpower. And your rest is the revolution we've all been waiting for.